Hello and welcome to Reconnect Rekindling Journeys with me, Shelley Doyle, and I'm joined today by the beautiful Claire Skillen. Hello, Claire.
Hi, Shelley. Pleasure to be here with you today.
Yeah, so nice to see you. Last time we were together in person, Claire is here on Vancouver Island, and somebody who I just adore spending time with. And when we get together, the conversation just flows, and it flows in such interesting directions, really juicy conversations. So I'm really excited to come together with you today and be able to share kind of a glimpse of some of those conversations with more people. Okay, so when we got together about a year ago, I was quite surprised to hear that you'd gone back to education. And I was kind of a year into my return to education. So I'd love to kind of delve into that a little bit and delve into how that's kind of playing a part in the calling that you are feeling pulled towards in your life.
Sounds good, Shelley. And I think there's so many moving parts and inputs that we have throughout careers and throughout our journeys. You know, like a polished beach stone, you never really know what's going to shape you. You know, could be the rock next over, could be the wave that whacks you against the log. You never know. When it comes to the master's degree that I'm pursuing right now, which is in counseling psychology, the thought of doing that master's actually first came about 20 years ago, believe it or not. And so and in part, not only of my own thinking, but also from, friends, people that I didn't even know very well that said, oh, you should go do this kind of thing. And I started to pay attention a little bit more as to what I naturally flowed towards, no matter what environment that I was in. And that's actually a really important thing that anybody can do, is to pay attention to where you naturally gravitate, no matter what environment that you're in. So be it in a classroom environment, be it in a work environment of any kind, or, even with, friends and everything else. What roles and hats do you naturally gravitate towards? And so I feel like the program I'm in now is honoring those natural tendencies that I think have always been there, that perhaps I didn't quite have as much clarity on as I do now. And so there's lots of really neat assessment tools out there. StrengthsFinder 2.0 is a wonderful one, and there's many of them out there. What I've noticed about myself over the years is that teacher and advisor have shown up no matter what I do. The coaching aspect of myself and the problem solving aspect of myself, and being open and curious about the world have always been there, no matter what job I've held. And as you know, I've had a number of roles over the years, anything from fisheries observing to working in women's policy to working in tech, gathering requirements for the natural resources sector as a business analyst, to being a board chair for iWist for a little while, all of those different things. And yet all of those things that I just shared showed up regardless of what hat or role I was wearing, right? So in essence, it's kind of been a journey of knowing that about myself and getting a better sense of how to combine those strengths. How can I best be of service? So as we get to know each other, ourselves and each other over the years, it's a process of self-exploration. We're constantly turning the dial on myself. It's like, okay, what if I tried this? How much more of my highest and best self shows up? I mean, you're never 100% in your highest and best, but what can you do to create a space or create an opportunity or vehicle so that the best of you shows up more often than not? And ultimately, everybody wins.
Oh, I love that so much. And I so resonate with the message to really pay attention to your curiosity and just see that it actually leads you. I had a conversation with a friend recently, and she said she said something really funny, like the surprise of the decade is that she suddenly got into Formula One, which is like totally not to do with work, but it's just something that she's never ever been interested in. It's so random. And it's like, you can surprise yourself with what you're interested in. I don't think I'm ever going to get into Formula One.
Hey, you never know.
You never know. Isn't it funny to listen and to be as inquisitive with ourselves as if our friend had just told us that they were into something new? It's like, oh, let's explore this.
The other thing, yes, and the word exploration, I think, is a really key word that you shared there too, because I think a lot of people get hung up on the concept of a career path. And when there was an article that was put out by Harvard Business Review that is finally changing the narrative on that a little bit. And, in some ways I sort of felt validated because my career history is, the comparable odd duck, and that I've done so many different things, and that most people have gone from here to here to here to here to here. Whereas the term career portfolio is a far more accurate representation of my career history. And I think a number of people out there as well. And the funny part is, I think you do have, to some degree, have to trust the timing of life. Because I'm going to make a much better, counselor, therapist, and, probably type of consultant in this area now than I would have 20 years ago. Because fascinatingly enough, when I look at all the different puzzle pieces that have since wended their way in my career portfolio, all of them have actually started to come together. And as I'm going through this program, I'm actually drawing on all of them. And that's what's actually supporting me in this journey. So sometimes you think you don't necessarily combine two seemingly disparate ideas and assume that one is going to help the other. But fascinatingly enough, the facilitation at work that I used to do as a senior business analyst, gathering requirements in tech, there's actually a lot of overlap between that and how I need to show up in a therapeutic setting for a client.
Wow.
And the fact that I've had the privilege of working and facilitating a small number of sessions with Indigenous nations, and understanding, the relationship building processes and how those are different and why it matters. All of it has been feeding in. And even the techniques that I've learned in tech to analyze problems, I've been migrating over into this program and have been successfully applying them into papers and into approaches so far. So it's really been an interesting experience.
It will make you such a different type of therapist, hey?
Yes.
Wow, so valuable. And what I'm doing at university right now as well is interdisciplinary studies. So it's just that, it's about fusing different disciplines to attempt to solve real world problems. So I'm with technology and community and leadership, and how all of this can come together to hopefully solve some loneliness issues in society. You spoke before about people showing up when they need to in all these different areas of your life. And I'd love to delve into that a little bit and think about some of the people that have shown up just when you needed them.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, Shelley. And sometimes it can be a family member. Sometimes it can be a friend that sort of phrases something a certain way for you. And other times it's people that you meet through different groups and organizations, as I have through my journey with Island Women in Science and Technology. And sometimes it's people that you meet through sport, like cold water swimming. Like I've had some really thought-provoking conversations while floating in the ocean off Dallas Road for a few minutes.
That's something you do often?
weekly, and I'm working on doing it more often because
Amazing.
of how good it is.
I haven't
But
braved it yet.
you'll get there. If you ever want to go, you let me know.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it can be a little bit bumpy out there sometimes. So having a core group of support is really important, because when things get stormy, and as a semi-experienced captain on the sea of life now, I can navigate a lot of storms, but I still also need some thoughts and support to anchor me as well. And so yeah, sometimes that comes into your core relationships and how important those are, because there's a lot of what I call noise out there in the world, people's comments, people's opinions, social media stuff, other sort of, societal inputs that can help push you off course, or maybe tip the vessel, or have a wave wash over and, perhaps wash away some of the confidence in the process. So I think it's when you focus and you check in on your core group, and I'm grateful to have some people like that in my life from a variety of walks. Then you check in with those people, like, according to these folks, have I done anything untowards there? Am I on track according to my core? Who knows me best, by the way? And if the answer is no, then I really don't need to be spending too much energy worrying about anything else. And sometimes I think we put too much energy out there. We're bombarded with information and opinions and, people's challenges all the time. The key is being able to care and yet remain detached at the same time. So I wouldn't be where I am today without, some core mentors in my life, which is why I am one now, and I have been for a little bit. So yeah, I'm grateful to be a mentor with Locale, and informally, I mentor as well. And I still have mentors of my own. And yeah, so really important to pay that forward. But those conversations that you can have with a mentor, or, times where you connect with a coach, for example, or times where you connect with a good friend or family member, they help to anchor you sometimes.
Totally. And like, before coming here, I had never had a mentor before. And it's just so valuable because they are willing to share, whereas coaches are more wanting you to find the answers. Yeah, it's a very different relationship with a mentor, because they are willing to share their insights, their learnings. And like, when I meet up with Bill, he's always got something for me. I've got something here, like he'll share.
Yeah,
He'll always print something. So
I love that.
funny printed.
What does that say?
It says, and once in a while, we meet people along our journey that connect with our soul in a way that we could only understand by the way it feels.
That makes so much sense, Shelley. And, I definitely connect with that in the conversations that you and I have had when we've had the chance to have them as well. And so the depth and exploration of conversation and topic, I think, really builds like a different level of connection. And that's so important. And the mentor piece, I totally agree with you, and that the dynamic is a bit different. Because I do this with my mentees as well. I actually say ahead of time, if you're comfortable, I will be 100% frank with you. Because I think sometimes there's a fear of being direct with people to say, hey, I don't think this is working. And it doesn't mean you're a bad person at all. It just means that this kind of way of operating, or this one particular thing, is not serving you or anyone else. So let's talk about it. Right? So you want someone that's going to be open and frank with you from a space of caring, and mentorship really can do that. Yeah.
And it's definitely a bit of crossover with coaching as well, but Yeah, I think there is a little bit of a risk with coaches that they are so the cheerleader and always just on your side. And is there that chance to really question? Are they brave enough to question? So
sometimes that can happen, as I'm learning through my program, through the art of reflection.
right.
Because when someone reflects back something that you've just said, then you as hearing yourself through someone else's words can actually understand something a little differently than you might have before. You're like, right, okay, did I actually say those words? Yeah, I did. Okay, what happened there? Where's that coming from? So a friend of mine said the other day, it's like, oh, I gotta, figure out all these priorities. And like in the first conversation, she talked about them being her priorities, and then she depersonalized them later. It's like, if they're all these priorities and they're not yours, then whose are they? So don't be afraid to ask that direct question, because you don't necessarily want to use the word shock into presence, but it pulls someone into presence. It's like, okay, let's examine that, because where is your energy going if it's not towards your stuff, right?
I hear you. And just before, you were talking about your core group of people that maybe you want to sense check things with. And are the majority of this group, would you say they were in-person contacts, or do you have a mix of both in-person and online people that you would go to about things that are important to you?
I definitely have a mix, and in part because some of the people that I've known the longest in my life don't live here anymore. And, I've managed to meet some wonderful people through the IWIS community as well, but not all of them live here either. So yeah, sometimes it's a phone conversation, or it's, a video chat over WhatsApp, and we both have the opportunity to share, and we both have the opportunity to have some frank conversations. And the gift is that uh, there's 100% frankness coming from a place of caring. So when you're wanting, say, okay, if this is where I'm going, then I trust my friend to be able to tell me, you know what, this is going well, this is doing well, but there's something really wrong in this area. And yeah, the frankness and honesty around where you can improve is such a gift, because I think a lot of times, in work cultures, or sometimes even friendships and other types of relationships, people have whatever reasons they have for being a little too nervous to be upfront and direct about things. And yeah, so the people in my core group are the ones that lovingly challenge me. And that includes challenging me on some of my own bullshit. Right?
Yes. So
you can't grow without that.
So something I've discovered recently is that in life we have three, and I'd love to know if this resonates. So in life, we have three types of friends. So we have green friends, and they're friends that we can just be our complete self with. It's really easy. We don't need to question anything at all. It just flows. Then we have our yellow friends, and they are the ones that we need to kind of self-edit for, to just keep the peace and make sure no conflict occurs. Then we have orange friends that don't challenge us on everything, but aren't afraid to challenge us, and we can have healthy debates with them. And the orange friends are really important to us, because they give us an opportunity to learn more about ourselves, about what we really do think about things. And it's the yellow friends that we might want to be a bit mindful of not spending too much time with, because if we keep self-editing, we start to lose the authenticity that we need to be kind of becoming the version of ourselves that we want to be.
Yeah. That does resonate to a degree, for sure. And that kind of pulls me back into the concept of energy. Like how do you feel in your body when you're around somebody? Do you feel guarded? Do you feel at ease? And that in essence kind of serves as a guidance as to where you do need to put your time and energy, right? And as you say, the orange friends who you challenge and who they challenge you, there's an opportunity for that deeper level of connection, because you feel like you can have those deeper philosophical conversations about life, and then also ultimately being a bit more vulnerable about, you know, who you are, the challenges that you face as a person in this, you know, wild and weird world that we live in. And so yeah, there's different levels of connection, I think, is probably a good word. And as you point out, sometimes it's the person that you see when you go out for like a paddling practice, for example, where you say hello, it's like, oh hey, you know, type of conversation, and you go for a paddle and you make a few comments about paddling, and then, you know, that connection's done. And then, but you wouldn't necessarily start a deep conversation about how people feel regarding climate change, for example. You might not have a conversation about that with folks like that. I mean, you never know. But with the orange friends, as you say, I have one friend in particular I can think of who I'm looking forward to connecting with in person. Maybe not this Friday, but next. I haven't seen her in a while, but we're able to have some of the best and most frank conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, you know, part about being a better therapist and overall better human being is doing the work, recognizing that you have biases. No, you're not someone that doesn't have any. And if you think that you don't, you probably have a bit more work to do and things to unpack. And so I'm fortunate to have, you know, a couple of people in my life where we can have really deep conversations. We come from very different places, and we're able to explore and understand and unpack some of those. And I've been able to challenge and, you know, process and ultimately remove some of the biases that, you know, for a while I didn't even realize were there until I dug a little deeper to figure out what they were. Right. So that's going to make me a more, you know, inclusive and understanding therapist, but also person, which is work that all of us really need to be doing.
So when you were talking about energy of when you're with different people, and you obviously feel different in yourself, and
Sure.
I think over the pandemic, when a lot of us were feeling lonely and isolated, and we're kind of missing a version of ourselves, because different people are allowing us to be a slightly different version of the person that we are. So what about when we are on our spiritual journeys and we are changing as individuals, and kind of leaning into the new version of ourselves that we're becoming, and through that we tend to gravitate towards kind of different people and different places. I would love to hear about the role that spirituality has played in your life, and the kind of different evolutions of Claire, and where it's taking you.
Yeah, I think that's means spirituality is such a nebulous term and means something different for everyone. I mean, I grew up as a Christian background, and I would say I'm more of a spiritual person now, if I had to provide a definition to it. But, you know, spirituality for me, I think, is, you know, having that genuine, meaningful connection with another human being. It's being 100% present as to where I am. So that old expression of being where your feet are, right? So when I do a cold water swim, that's not only something that's good for self-care, but it's also a spiritual experience, because you're just floating in the peace and you're connected with the energy of the ocean, and you're facing the morning light and you're just taking it in like you're a solar panel, right? But you're also sharing that experience, you know, with a couple of other people who love it as much as you do. and all of that, I think, anchors you. I mean, we all evolve as people. I'm not the same person that I was 10 years ago. How could I be? We all go through things, both positive and negative, that shape us. And so it's impossible to be the same person. Sometimes that, you have to grieve that, to allow something new. But that process of change, I think, can be made a little bit easier by anchoring ourselves in things that don't perhaps move as much despite all the change around us. And that, again, is getting linked in with your own core. So I know no matter what, over the years, even since I was a kid, I've loved nature, right? So that's one of my ways to connect and commune and ground or focus on core. Writing is another way to do that. Having deep and meaningful conversations with people who are just as curious as me about the world and everything in it. So I think those are some core elements that help navigate and that have remained the same despite other aspects of self. And so it's across the evolution of me over time has been an integration of lessons, a combination of a letting go and an integration of new pieces. So yeah, that's a start to that. There's so much more to say on that piece, but
I want to touch on grief, because I know we've spoken about this before, and you just shared some really interesting thoughts about the kind of polarity with grief and joy. I wonder if you'd like to expand on that.
I'm happy to. I think one of the things that I've become a lot more present to, especially as I've been going through these studies as well, is that most people still tend to associate grief with something negative in their life. And so, let's say like a job was, somebody lost a job, or they had an illness and experienced a loss, or they lost someone close to them, or any number of reasons that could be out there to cause someone distress or sadness. Most people associate grief with those sorts of things. But sometimes grief can come in with joy as well, because let's say you got a new promotion and it requires to leave a piece of your old self behind so that you can step into something new. And so sometimes the grief process is the honoring of that old aspect of self that you need to release, as an example.
And something else that we've delved into together is tapping. And this is something that I was only introduced to last year, and I've since kind of done an introduction to EFT tapping, and I'm finding myself doing it a little bit more just spontaneously. I would love to hear any insights that you have on tapping, and can it really benefit us?
I certainly think it can. I am a certified Kruger healing practitioner. And while the tapping that you speak of is a little bit different, the biological reason that I learned why Kruger works, and so Kruger looks to balance the body's nervous system by using the skin's natural dermatome patterns. So this is in honor of the late Dr. Kruger, who passed recently. He was a chiropractic physician and founded the technique, and you can look him up. But Kruger uses tapping as well. And one of the reasons that it works is that the cells in our skin, when they were first being formed, they never lost the connection to the central nervous system. And so when we tap, we're actually able to communicate with the core of the nervous system, which is part of why it works. So do I think tapping works? Yes, I do. So with Kruger, if you have something that's out of balance, so thyroid, right? If I need to tell my thyroid to get back to homeostasis, I'm giving my body a hand to say, okay, I need you to focus your energy here right now, because this area needs a little bit of help. And with the tapping, So I think EFT is here, as I remember. Yeah, and then down here. And then where's the next one? Yes, there we go. Nice. And then around here, yeah. So, yeah, what's wonderful about tapping and healing modalities like Kugarami healing is that it's a direct conversation with the nervous system, which when you function in the society like we do, where we're 100 miles an hour, how often do we actually check in with the nervous system that's wondering what the heck happened? Because we've had to, do a full week of work. Maybe we're a mom and we have to juggle kids and events along with working, and then some are going to school too, and all of that's pressure to try and do it all. In the meantime, our nervous system is doing its best to hang in there. But the tapping and the Kruger, for example, are wonderful exercises in being present and almost care for the nervous system.
And are you practicing as a consultant healer right now?
I don't. It's more sort of word of mouth. So if a friend gives me a call, then I'm happy to provide a treatment. And I learned so that I could also do a better job of looking after myself as well. Or if I was away from areas where there was medical attention, because I go hiking, then I was in a position to help myself, at least to a degree, until I could get somewhere where I could.
Totally resonate with that. I did my yoga teacher training back in 2018.
Yeah.
And I can probably count on one hand the number of times I've actually taught a class, but amazing to be able to have that deeper practice myself and really get to know it myself.
Yeah.
So amazing for self-development. There was one more thing that I
Sure.
would love for you to share. So when we got together last, you were talking about the fact that you live in the sky. And there's a beautiful grounding technique that you heard on a podcast. And I would love for you to share it for any listeners that might be living in the sky.
And just for those of you out there, by living in the sky, we do mean living in condo buildings. Living in a treehouse would be fun, but that's not the case here. Yeah, it would be different. That might actually be better for grounding. Who knows? So yeah, many of us live in condos, or maybe we're even on the top floor of a house somewhere. And I think many of us are beginning to hear a little bit more about grounding and its benefits. And so the tricky part about grounding is if you're far away from the ground, it's kind of hard to do it. So if you're up in a condo, there is a wonderful woman by the name of Donna Eden. Some people call her the mother of energy medicine. And feel free to look up her podcast. She has a free sort of webinar that she does. And she actually teaches 4 different techniques around energy medicine. And one of these happened to serve to facilitate grounding when you live high in the sky, as I do, and as probably many of you do out there. So when we ground, when we actually have our feet on the earth, we have those metallic ions that our body is able to connect with. So it changes the charge. And so imagine like an electrical current going up through one side of your body and then going down the other, because you're connected to earth. When you're not in that place, what Donna Eden suggests is a stainless steel spoon. And I know it sounds funny to rub the bottom of your foot with a spoon. And I was like, okay, this is a pretty weird thing that I've done. But I was like, why do you have that by your bedside? But what you do is you take the back part of that spoon and you rub it on the bottom of your feet. And what that does is to mimic the same kind of effect of those ions, the ion charge that you get from your feet actually being on the earth. And so that helps with a couple of things. One, it can help you sleep better. And the other thing that it can help with, as we know with the literature on grounding, is to reduce overall systemic inflammation in the body, which is a pretty important thing to keep in check.
Beautiful. And something else has just come to me while you've been talking. You taught me another technique, which I have since taught a handful of people, including my kids.
Love
And
it.
it was the wave,
Ocean breath.
ocean breath. Talk us through
Yeah.
this.
Ocean breath is wonderful. It was taught to me probably about 5 years ago. And I was also hooked up to a brainwave machine at the same time. So this was really neat, especially if you're someone who's interested in science and tech. To be able to watch your brainwaves change was absolutely fascinating for me. So as you can imagine, brainwaves for most people as they're going about their day are like, really focused and busy. So what ocean breath does is you give yourself a big hug like this. And it's important that it's the outside of your arms. So you do nice, gentle circles on the sides of your arms. And the key thing is just like the ocean waves, like the water sucks out and you breathe in for 5 seconds. And then you breathe out for 5 seconds. So just like a wave ebbing and flowing on the ocean there for 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. And the hug and the circles on the arms, it's a direct communication with your nervous system, and it really helps to gear shift. So if you're wanting to take better care of your nervous system, if you find yourself a bit anxious or overstimulated, then ocean breath is really effective at helping you to gear shift down a little bit and get to a calmer state. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. So valuable. You have been so giving. I would love to know, like, what's next for you, and if people want to find you, where is the best place for them to find you?
Best place to find me is probably on LinkedIn. So my name is exactly as it appears. There aren't too many of me on LinkedIn, and you can always find me on Facebook as well, and send me a message there. Or if you do want to reach out, I can provide people with an email, and they can connect with you if they wish to get a hold of me.
And you're no longer the chair of iWhisper, you're still very involved, and you go on a lot of the monthly wellness wonder walks as well.
I do. I still lead the odd one of those. It's I'm grateful that some are starting to step in and lead some of their own. I love the fact that we have like next month we have one of our own members that's leading a wander, because I was just more. It's more than the board. It's about all the members and the community, and it's great for members to jump in and show up for community that way. So super grateful that that's happening. That one will be 3rd week of June at Royal Road. So we hope to see everybody there. And yes, I do serve as an advisor still, and that's been an important balance for me with juggling work and school and everything else. So yeah, new governance structure, as I might have shared before, is I tend to cater to my nervous system. Yeah, it's a really important thing to do, because that is what allows me to show up as the best version of myself for everything that I do, and not to compromise that.
So I've been hearing, as a mama, put your own face mask on first, and then you can be the person that you need to be in the family, in the society, in your community, and everything. So I really, really appreciate your time, your energy, and everything that you shared today, Claire. Thank you so much for being here.
It's been a pleasure, Shelley. Thank you for having me and hosting me, and great questions as well. There's so much more to explore on all of them.
Absolutely. Mwah. Ciao.
Cheers.